I thought hearing I was dying would be the most painful moment of my life, but that was before I walked up to my own front porch and heard my wife giggling with another man inside her house. That's when I realized cancer wasn't the thing that was going to break me. She was. I still remember the feel of the cold leather under me in that doctor's office. The fluorescent lights above, flickering like they knew what was coming. I sat there, hands clasped in my lap, watching the doctor's lips move. He was trying to sound gentle, like someone easing a child in a bad news. But there's no gentle way to say, you have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And there's definitely no way to make, you probably have less than a year, feel anything short of sledgehammer to the chest. I nodded. I didn't ask many questions. What was the point? The words inoperable and aggressive spread were enough. As I walked out of that building, it was like the world had changed. The air felt thicker. Sounds were quieter. People moved around me like I was already invisible. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, engine idling, fingers locked around the steering wheel, staring blankly through the windshield. I could have gone anywhere after that, but I went home. Needed to see Angela. I didn't know how I'd tell her yet. I figured maybe I'd wait until dinner. Or maybe I'd just sit next to her on the couch and say it straight. I'm dying, Ange. Simple, honest, clean. But I never got the chance. Because when I stepped up to the front porch and reached for the doorknob, I heard something I hadn't heard in a long, long time. Angela's laugh. Not the tired chuckle she gave when I told a dad joke. Not the polite smile she wore at dinner. This was her laugh, the real one. Light, bubbly, alive. And then a man's voice followed. Deep, smooth, confident. I froze. They were inside my house. I pressed my ear closer to the door, and for a moment I didn't breathe. I just listened. Her voice was soft, flirtatious. She said something I couldn't make out, then laughed again. Then the man spoke, calm, casual, like he belonged there. Like this was just another day in the life of someone who had no business in my home. I backed away, heart thudding. For a second, I thought about kicking the door in, marching straight in there and demanding answers. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the fact that I'd just been told I wouldn't live to see another Christmas. Maybe it was the numbness already creeping through my veins. Or maybe I just wanted proof. See, what Angela didn't know, what no one knew, was that the house cameras weren't the only ones I had. She insisted on disabling them for privacy after our son moved out, so it made her feel watched. What she didn't know was that I had another property, the farm, and that a few years ago, I'd installed a second system out there, one that wasn't connected to the cloud, one that recorded directly to local storage. I hadn't looked at the feeds in months. They were mostly from monitoring wildlife, storms, coyotes, but I'd also wired the main house for interior footage, just in case. So I got back in my truck and drove. The farm was about 45 minutes out, just past a ridge. Long winding road, gravel driveway, surrounded by trees and silence. It was the one place I could think. I unlocked the cabin, turned on the old desktop I hadn't used in weeks, and pulled up the system. The files were there, labeled by date. The timestamp from just an hour earlier blinked at me like it knew I was coming. I clicked, and there they were. Angela, my wife of 17 years. In our living room, 2 glasses of red wine on the table. Her dress was new, something I hadn't seen before. She had makeup on, the kind she usually reserved for dinners out, not afternoons at home. Sitting beside her was a man I knew. Jason, a former co-worker of mine, someone I'd once helped through a rough patch. I hadn't heard from him in over a year. Now he was sitting on my couch, and Angela was leaning into him, laughing, touching his arm, smiling that smile I hadn't seen in years. Then, without hesitation, they both stood up and walked down the hallway toward the guest room. I watched in silence. My chest didn't rise. I didn't even blink. This wasn't heartbreak. This was confirmation. Confirmation that I'd been living with a stranger. That while I was working, aging, and quietly dying inside, she was off finding someone who made her feel alive. I didn't cry. Not then. Not even later. I just sat back in that creaky old chair at the farm and stared at the still frame on the screen. The hallway. The open bedroom door. Her hand in his. And I felt calm, because now I knew. And with nothing left to lose, I could finally start planning how to make sure she lost everything. She came home that night, smiling, humming to herself like nothing happened. Like the man she brought into our house that afternoon was just a figment of my imagination. She had no idea I already knew everything. Angela walked through the front door around 6:30 p.m., keys jingling, heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She looked radiant. Hair done, subtle makeup, that same red dress now replaced by cozy loungewear like she just had a normal, boring day. "Hey, babe," she said, leaning in for a quick kiss. I turned my head just slightly. She caught the signal, pretended not to notice, and busied herself with unpacking groceries she'd clearly picked up just to look normal. "You eat already?" she asked casually. "Nope," I said, sipping from my glass of water, eyes still on my laptop screen. "Want to do pasta tonight? I can make that lemon garlic one you like." I nodded slightly. "Sure." She smiled too wide, overcompensating, trying too hard, the kind of smile that said, "I'm still the loving wife. Look how domestic I am." And I just watched. I watched the way she avoided eye contact when she passed behind me. I watched how her phone never left the counter, always face down, like usual. I watched her posture, casual but tense underneath. She knew something. Maybe not what I knew, but she felt the shift. And that's exactly what I wanted. I didn't confront her that night. Or the next. I didn't yell. Didn't accuse. Didn't even flinch when she leaned in for a kiss, and I offered her my cheek. Because this time, I was playing the long game. The very next morning, while she was still asleep, I met with my lawyer. We'd worked together a few years back when I helped my parents restructure their estate. Solid guy. Confidential. The kind who doesn't flinch when you say, "I've got stage 4 cancer and a cheating wife." By noon, we'd already started rewriting my will. Angela wouldn't get a cent. The house, savings, retirement accounts, all going to the kids. We might have raised them together, but they were mine in every way that mattered. She hadn't been their real mother in years. Just a woman who drifted in and out between spa weekends, wine tastings, and work trips with coworkers I never met. I updated my medical directives, too. Made sure she had zero say over my care. My oldest daughter, Emma, will be the one making any medical decisions. I also granted her full power of attorney for when things got worse. Angela would be locked out of everything. Legally, financially, emotionally. But from the outside, you never know a thing was wrong. At home, I was calm, present, helpful even. I folded laundry. I made dinner. I even watched one of those boring home renovation shows she loved, pretending to care while secretly forwarding emails to my attorney. Angela, meanwhile, was on her best behavior. Overly sweet, touchy. She started calling me pet names again like honey and love, which she hadn't used in months. Classic overcorrection. She sensed the tension, but she couldn't quite place it. And because I wasn't reacting like she expected, she doubled down. She cooked more, dressed up more. One night, she even lit candles at dinner. "Just felt like doing something nice," she said with a smile, setting down a perfectly cooked steak. I cut into it slowly, chewing as I looked across the table at her. This woman I no longer recognized. She wasn't trying to fix our marriage. She was trying to control the narrative. Keep me stable. Keep me blind. What she didn't realize was, I'd already seen everything I needed. That weekend, I took a drive to the farm again. Checked the backup recordings. And sure enough, there was another visit. Different day. Same man. Same wine. Same routine. Only this time, she'd packed an overnight bag. That was the final nail. I downloaded the footage, zipped it into a folder, and titled it, "For the Judge." Back home, I kept up the act. Angela brought me coffee in bed, started asking about weekend getaways. She even suggested we renew our vows. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "That sounds lovely," because I wanted her to think she was still in control. But inside, I was done. Every smile I gave was a delay tactic. Every hug a weapon. Every "I love you" a step closer to the cliff I was going to let her walk off herself. She wasn't just cheating. She was underestimating me. And that was her biggest mistake. Angela started acting strange about 3 days after the dinner. She tried so hard to make perfect. It was like she'd noticed the distance between us had grown too visible. And now she was desperate to cover it with noise, affection, nostalgia, sex appeal. Anything. She began waking up earlier than usual, making breakfast like she used to in our early years. French toast, blueberry smoothies, bacon just the way I liked it, all performed with a soft smile and good morning, love, like it was 2011 again and we were still something solid. I played along. I always thanked her, kissed her cheek, but never the lips. She noticed. I could tell. And so she turned up the charm. She'd brush past me in the hallway and let her fingers graze my lower back. She started using pet names again, babe, honey, even my love. The last one hit my ears like a fake accent. All of it felt performative, like she was reading a script for a part she hadn't played in years. Then came the lingerie. She left it accidentally on the bed one morning while she was showering. Something lacy and new, definitely bought recently. A little tag still attached. I didn't say a word about it. Just tossed it gently in her drawer before heading out. That night, she acted surprised. "Oh, you found that," she said, pretending to sound shy. "I thought you might like it." I nodded. "Looks expensive." She gave a nervous laugh. "It was on sale." I didn't say anything else. Just turned the page of the book I was reading and let her stew in that silence. The next day, she texted me in the middle of work, something she hadn't done in months. "Thinking about you, Black Heart. Can we do something special tonight?" I replied, "Sure." I came home to candles, music, and a roast dinner she clearly spent hours on. She wore a black dress she used to save for company events, paired with that perfume, the musky one I hadn't smelled in years. We sat down. She poured wine. We ate. She laughed too loudly at her own jokes. Tried to play footsie under the table. I smiled, ate slowly, let her lead. "I miss this," she said at one point, eyes wide like a teenager on prom night. "Just us." I nodded. "Yeah, it's been a while." Later, as we stood in the kitchen cleaning up, she leaned in from behind, arms around my waist, lips near my neck. "Let's not waste another night apart," she whispered. I turned around, kissed her on the forehead, and said, "I'm exhausted." "Rain check." Her smile twitched. "Of course," she said. "Maybe this weekend." She didn't sleep well that night. I could feel her shifting beside me. Her breathing never settled. She was trying to guess what was happening. She knew something was off, but she couldn't figure out what. 2 mornings later, she slipped. We were in the living room, half watching a rerun of a travel show we used to enjoy, and she laughed suddenly. "This totally reminds me of that trip we took with Michael," she said, almost wistfully. "Remember that hotel with the messed-up air conditioner?" I turned to her. "Michael." The smile froze on her lips. She blinked too fast. "I know. Sorry, I meant Matthew. Not Michael. You remember Matthew, right? From accounting." I just stared at her. No expression. No reaction. I let the moment hang between us until she got up and left the room. She didn't bring it up again. But later that night, I heard her pacing in the guest room while she was looking for a missing bracelet. The next day, I checked the farm camera logs again. And guess what? Michael. Same guy from the last 2 visits. Same black BMW. Same weekend bag. This time, they didn't even bother staying inside the whole time. They took wine out to the patio. Sat under the string lights I'd hung myself 3 summers ago. She curled into his side like she belonged there. She didn't know about the outdoor audio. I heard enough to know this wasn't casual. "I can't wait until this is over," she whispered to him. He's barely even a person anymore. Just there, taking up space. He laughed. "We'll figure it out. Once the money's clear, we'll go." Clear? Money? She had plans. I didn't know what she thought she was getting, but it wouldn't be much. Not after the updates I'd already made to the will. Not after what I was about to finish. That weekend, I visited the lawyer again. We finalized the trust documents, the power of attorney, the emergency provisions if I became incapacitated. Everything. Angela would be entitled to exactly nothing. And the best part? She'd only find out when it was too late to stop it. Back at home, she kept up the act. Talked about booking a trip together. Started planning a surprise vow renewal. "Something intimate," she said, touching my hand. "Just us and the kids." I nodded slowly. "That sounds nice." She smiled, the smile of someone who thought the storm had passed. I'd come back around, that she'd won. But the truth was, she didn't even know the game had changed. Angela said she was heading to her co-worker's place that afternoon. Said they needed to go over some documents for an upcoming conference. Sounded harmless enough, right up until I opened the GPS tracking app one had quietly reinstalled on her SUV 2 weeks earlier. At exactly 2:43 p.m., she pulled into a cul-de-sac on the north side of town, a quiet residential street that didn't match anything she told me. I zoomed in on the satellite image. Same address I'd marked during her last visit. Same black BMW parked out front. Same house. Michael's. I saved the route, time-stamped the trip, took a screenshot of the plate, and backed it all up in my for court folder. She was officially caught, not just by cameras, but by data she couldn't explain away. She got home around 6, smiling, holding a bottle of wine and a pizza box like it was just another chill night in. Hair curled, lip gloss fresh. That I've been laughing all day, glow still lingering on her face. Movie night, she chirped. I figured we could unwind a little. Just us. I nodded. Sure. She poured wine, lit candles, and picked one of those cheesy romantic comedies she used to pretend to hate. She nestled beside me on the couch, head on my shoulder, fingers brushing against mine. I didn't pull away. I didn't lean in either. Halfway through the movie, she looked up and whispered, "You've been different lately." I glanced down. Different how? I don't know, she said. Just quieter, calmer, but in a good way. I nodded. I've just been thinking a lot. About what? Everything, I said, with just enough weight to keep her guessing. The next evening, she brought it up again, this time over dinner. We were eating in the backyard, soft jazz playing on her phone, fairy lights twinkling along the fence. I've been thinking, she said, voice soft, eyes wide. Maybe it's time I don't know. Hit reset. I raised an eyebrow. Reset. She reached for my hand across the table. I mean it. Us. Our marriage. I know things haven't been perfect, but I want to fix that. I want to show you I'm all in. I let the silence linger before responding. And how would we do that? She smiled, hopeful, rehearsed. What if we renewed our vows? Just something small. Just us and the kids. A new beginning. I looked her in the eyes. You really mean that? She nodded. More than ever. I squeezed her hand. That sounds beautiful. She exhaled, visibly relieved. Like she believed, in that moment, that her little performance had worked. But she had no idea what I was already putting in place. That morning, while she was at yoga, I'd signed a final version of my will. The updated trust, the power of attorney, the medical directives, everything. Angela was no longer in any of it. The house was now in my children's names. The savings accounts were moved. The passwords changed. Even my end-of-life care would be managed without her involvement. She'd been fully cut out of my life, legally, financially, emotionally. She just didn't know it yet. The next few days, she went all in on the role of loving wife. Breakfasts in bed, sweet texts. She even booked a weekend getaway to the mountains. Just the two of us, no distractions. I said yes. Not because I wanted to go, but because every yes from me made her feel safer. And the safer she felt, the harder the crash would hit when the truth came out. She made one more mistake before the end of the week. She said the words, "I'm so glad we're getting back to who we used to be. You're the man I fell in love with again." I looked at her for a long second and smiled. But in my head, I was counting down the days. Because the man she fell in love with wasn't coming back. And the man sitting in front of her now, he wasn't going to let her walk away with anything. Dinner was her idea. She lit candles, dimmed the lights, picked out jazz, the kind we used to listen to on long drives when we still liked each other. She made her famous herb-crusted salmon, plated it like a 5-star chef, and even wore the sapphire earrings I got her on our 10th anniversary. I knew what this was. A final push. A test. She wanted to see if I'd broken, if her charm offensive had worked, if I was falling for the act again. I pulled her chair out, sat across from her, and let her pour the wine. She gave me that soft, practiced smile. The one she probably gave Michael, too. We clinked glasses. "To us," she said. I nodded. "To us." We ate for a while in silence. She talked about vacation spots, Hawaii, Sedona, maybe Napa. I listened, smiled when appropriate, didn't say much. And then, when she reached for her glass again, I said it. "I know." She froze. "Know what?" I met her eyes. "I know about Michael. I know about the cabin, the weekend trips, the wine, the cameras. Her face went slack, then pale. "You're not serious," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm very serious." She laughed, a panicked, desperate sound. "Okay, wow. So now you're spying on me." "No," I said calmly. "I was verifying suspicion. Turned out, I didn't even need to dig very deep. You two made it pretty easy." Her mouth opened, then closed again. She was scrambling. I can explain. "I'm not interested." I cut in. "This isn't a conversation. This is a conclusion." She looked like she was about to cry. "You don't understand what it's been like." "No, Anfela. You don't get to do that. You don't get to talk about your feelings now that you've been caught." I stood up slowly and walked to the side table, picked up a folder, and slid it across the table to her. "What is this?" she asked, not touching it. "My lawyer's been busy. That's your notice. I'm filing for divorce. You're being removed from the deed. The accounts are closed. The assets have been moved." She finally picked it up and flipped through the pages. Her hands were shaking. This can't be legal." "It's airtight," I said. "Every decision's been reviewed, signed, and filed. I've known about your affair for over a month. I gave you plenty of time to stop. You didn't. I thought we were fixing things," she snapped. "No, you thought you were fooling me." She slammed the folder shut. "You can't do this to me. I've been your wife for 17 years, and I gave you every chance to walk away with dignity," I said. "But you wanted to play games. So now, you lose." She stood up, her voice rising. "You're just doing this because you're sick. You want to punish me before you die and leave me with nothing." I tilted my head. "That's exactly right." She stared at me, stunned. "You're serious. Dead serious." She moved to grab her phone, maybe to call her mom, or a lawyer, or Michael for all I knew. I didn't care. I'd planned for all of it. "Angela," I said, stopping her mid-step. "From this moment on, I want no more pretense. No more acting. No more fake kisses. No more candlelit dinners. You and I, we're done." Her voice cracked. "What about the kids? They know enough. And they'll know more when the time comes. I'll fight you in court." "You won't win," I said. "You brought another man into our home. I have footage, audio, GPS records, texts. My attorney says if we push, you'll walk away with nothing but your last name." She looked at the table, the folder, the candles flickering between us. Everything she thought she controlled was crumbling. I picked up my wine glass and took a slow sip. "I'll be sleeping in the guest room from now on," I said. "If you want to save face, start packing before the paperwork hits. You'll be served formally in the next few days." Angela just stood there, still holding her phone like it might protect her from the consequences. But it wouldn't, because this time, she wasn't the one holding the power. I was. She didn't leave right away. For the first few days after I handed her the divorce papers, Angela tried to act like it was a bluff, like she still had a shot at rewriting the ending. She cooked, cleaned, made herself visible in every room, asked if I wanted coffee, asked if I wanted to talk. I ignored most of it, replied politely when I had to, but otherwise, I gave her silence. It was eating her alive. The third night, she finally snapped. I was sitting in the guest room, going over some estate documents with my reading glasses on when she barged in without knocking. "You can't just cut me out," she said, voice trembling. I didn't look up. I already did. Her hands were shaking. "You don't get to just erase me like I never mattered." I closed the folder slowly and met her eyes. "Angela, you're not upset because of what this means for us. You're upset because you're about to lose the lifestyle you thought was guaranteed." "That's not true," she snapped. "I've been your wife for 17 years. I've taken care of you, this house." I laughed cold and sharp. "You took care of yourself. You spent my money, lived in my home, and slept with another man in my bed. Don't talk to me about loyalty." Her eyes welled up. "I made a mistake." "No, you made a choice," I said, over and over again. She wiped her face, breathing hard. "Fine, if you want to make me the villain, go ahead. But at least be honest, you've been checked out for years." My jaw clenched. "Angela, I got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 6 weeks ago. I've been meeting with doctors, updating my will, and preparing our family for what's coming. That's what I've been checked out doing." The silence that followed was brutal. She blinked. "What?" she said finally, her voice a whisper. "I'm dying," I said flatly. And even then, I stayed quiet. I didn't want to ruin things. But you? You found the first available exit and took it. Her hand went to her mouth. You never told me. I didn't trust you. That broke something. Her knees buckled slightly, and she sat on the edge of the bed, still staring at me like I'd spoken in another language. You really sick? She asked. I nodded. And you know what? I'm not even angry anymore. Just tired. Tired of pretending you're still someone I love. Tired of holding everything together so you can feel safe. She looked at the floor, then back up at me. I didn't know. You didn't care to know, I said. I was home less. Quieter. Distant. You didn't ask why. You just found someone who gave you attention and took the shortcut. She stood up suddenly, panic setting in. Okay, we can fix this. Therapy. I'll go. I'll do whatever it takes. Please, let's just slow down. No, I said. This isn't salvageable. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. Angela, I said, this is where it ends. You'll be served formally in a few days. Until then, we share a roof, but nothing else. She stared at me like I'd just torn her identity out from under her. What am I supposed to do? She asked, voice cracking. Start over? Get a job? Move in with my sister? I shrugged. You'll figure it out. You don't even care, she whispered. You're right, I said. I don't. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I didn't move. Didn't chase her. I sat back down, reopened the folder, and picked up where I left off. After our last conversation, Angela went quiet for a few days. Not gone, just shifting, like a snake shedding its skin. The rage, the panic, the tears, all replaced with a new strategy. Now she was playing the long game. Again, she started baking. Banana bread, blueberry muffins, cinnamon rolls. The smell hit me every morning like a challenge. Look how nurturing I can be, it seemed to say. Look what you're about to throw away. She began leaving little notes around the house. Hope you slept okay. Let me know if you need anything today. I'm here. Remember when we used to have coffee on the porch? I miss that. She started dressing like she used to, not for running errands, but for me, or what she thought might still work on me. Tight sweaters, that old blue dress I once said made her eyes look brighter, soft makeup, hair always done. She offered back rubs, told jokes at dinner, laughed at mine, even at bad ones. She was pulling out every version of herself she thought I missed. But I didn't miss any of them. I was done missing her. She hovered near me when I was on the phone, asked who I was talking to, asked what I had planned for the day. I always answered plainly. I'm meeting the estate attorney at 2. I'm going to the bank to update the trust documents. I'll be at the farm for a few hours. Each sentence made her flinch, even if she tried not to show it. Because every one of those tasks meant another nail in the coffin of her financial fantasy. The more I moved, the less ground she had left. That Friday, I sat down with my attorney, both kids, and their spouses. I handed them the binder, every document, every account, every signature, and explained it all. I'm not asking for anything from you, I told them. I'm just letting you know what's in place. My daughter, Emma's eyes welled up. Dad, I'm fine, I said. I've had time to come to peace with all of this. I just want things settled. Clean. I transferred ownership of the house, the farm, the vehicles. Set up medical power of attorney. Transfer my shares. Finalize guardianship over everything I once kept private. There would be no questions, no battles, no loopholes. And most importantly, no Angela. She wasn't even a footnote in the estate anymore. When I got home, she was making dinner, pot roast, her so-called specialty. The table was set with candles again, and soft music played in the background. Smells good, I said, setting my keys on the counter. She turned, smiling like we were back in year 2. I thought you might be hungry. I sat down. She served me a plate. We ate in silence for a while. You've been busy, she said softly, folding her napkin. I looked up. I have. I've noticed the kids coming around more. All the calls, the meetings. I didn't respond. I just hope, she continued, that whatever you're doing, you're not doing it out of anger. Because I really do want to make things right. I met her gaze. You want to make things right for you. That's not fair. It's not meant to be. Her lip quivered. I still love you, you know. I leaned back in my chair. That's not love. That's damage control. She looked away. The mask slipped for a second. Then, just as quickly, she pulled it back on. That night, she tried one last move. She came into my room, wearing the same silk robe she'd worn on our honeymoon. Her perfume trailed behind her like memory. "Can I sit?" she asked. I nodded. She walked slowly, sat on the edge of the bed, and took my hand. "I know I hurt you," she whispered. "I know I messed up, but we had good years, didn't we? Can't we try to find our way back?" I looked at her hand in mine, then let go. "Already found my way forward," I said. She sat there for a few seconds longer, then stood, eyes glassy. When she turned to leave, she paused at the door. "You're really going to go through with all of this?" "Yes." She swallowed hard. "Then I guess I should start packing." I nodded once. Probably a good idea. The hearing lasted just under 20 minutes. Angela showed up dressed like a grieving widow. Black dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back. Her attorney looked 10 years younger and 10 steps behind. She held her posture like she still had a shot. Like the judge might look at her, hear her voice crack, and forget the evidence. But the judge didn't forget, because I didn't let him. We submitted everything: GPS logs, video files, audio recordings, printed messages. It wasn't just circumstantial, it was definitive. Angela hadn't just broken our marriage. She'd done it with intent, with planning, and with remarkable arrogance. Her lawyer tried to pivot. "Your Honor, we believe this marriage can still be repaired. My client is open to reconciliation. This wasn't an emotional abandonment." "Objection," my lawyer said sharply. "We have documented proof of willful infidelity and a clear attempt to maintain financial control through deception. Reconciliation isn't relevant. This is a no-contest proceeding." The judge nodded. "Agreed. Motion to deny spousal support is approved. Assets previously contested will remain with Mr. Langston's estate as designated by his trust." Angela didn't say a word. Not during the hearing. Not after. She just stared straight ahead, lips pressed tight, jaw clenched so hard I thought she might crack a tooth. It was over, and she knew it. Outside the courthouse, I stood on the steps for a moment, breathing in the dry spring air. My lawyer patted my shoulder. "You did everything right," he said. I nodded. "It was never about revenge." "No," he said. "It was about control." I looked across the street. Angela stood beside her car, her phone to her ear, pacing. Probably calling Michael, or maybe her sister, or maybe just hoping someone, anyone, could fix what she just lost. No one could. By the end of the week, she was gone from the house. Left a note on the kitchen counter, something vague and overly polite. "I hope someday you find peace. I'm sorry for everything. Goodbye." She didn't even sign it. I stood in the living room that night, the space quiet for the first time in months. Her shoes were gone from the entryway. Her robe wasn't hanging on the bathroom door. The fake calm, the tension, the noise, all gone. I walked out onto the porch and sat down, the wood creaking under me. I closed my eyes and let the silence settle. The next morning, I handed the last binder of documents to Emma. She hugged me tight, held on longer than usual. "You okay, Dad?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm okay." And I was. I didn't have long. The cancer was moving fast, but I had enough time to do what mattered, to give my kids everything they needed, to protect what I built, to make sure the last chapter of my life didn't belong to someone who only saw me as a safety net. 1 week later, I sat at the kitchen table, flipping through old family photos when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Voicemail. I played it. Angela's voice, quiet, shaken. I saw the court records. I saw everything. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. I guess I never really knew you at all. But maybe that's fair. You didn't know me either. She paused. Anyway, I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted. I deleted the message. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. Just because there was nothing left to hear.